Hey everyone, Matt Krieger to walk through the Q3 report. It's been a couple months since we went through this, so let's kind of review not just September, but really all the way back from May. First off, looking at system-wide revenue, September was a very positive month. We saw some really good growth out over last year, especially after really July and August on a per franchisee basis were relatively flat. Matter of fact, July was a little bit down, but we saw that really pick up in September. Matter of fact, September saw almost 30% growth over last year. Year to date, we're still up by 20%. You can see the 174,000 average per location. Last year, we were just sitting at 139. When we look at the appointments, I think it's interesting. We look at this appointment completion percentage, and really what this does is this looks at the amount of scheduled appointments, and then it compares that to the completed appointments. And so that's really how we come up with the appointment completion percentage. When we look, back in December, in January, and really even February, and historically, if we even go back to previous winters, we typically see this drop down. Weather kind of affects this, as you'll see, storms come in, things like that. We can't complete the work. There just happens to be appointments that we're not able to complete. We saw the same thing happen in July, and this is really the first July that we've seen this happen. What's interesting is this really does correspond with the number of proposals that went out. It does look like as the proposals increase, and we saw a huge increase specifically in August, but also in July. As the proposals increase, it does look like that might have had an impact on the appointments completed. With that being said, 87% still very, very high. You can see that over the last 12 months, really, really strong numbers. I think, as long as we're sitting above kind of that 80, 85%, that's relatively strong. We talked about proposals and look at the volume of proposals here in August. It's over $5 million in proposals. We'll kind of do a breakdown of that here in a second, but very, very strong number of proposals that went out. You can see in August, or excuse me, yes, in August, 735 proposals went out. It dropped down to 446 in August, or excuse me, in September. That's actually just right on par with where we were last year. This 735 was about 200 more than we had done the previous August. So August and July, both very, very strong proposal months. A matter of fact, that really capped off a really good run from about April all the way through August of really strong proposal volume. You can see we had a little bit of a down month here in June, but outside of that, very, very strong proposal volume, very, very strong number of proposals. We've been over 300 for all but one of the last 5 months. So very, very strong. As we look at our close rate, again, our close rate typically, if I look back at a trailing 12 months, we're really looking at about 33%. We close about one out of every three deals. And remember that the most recent month typically doesn't have as high of a close rate because we're waiting into October to see some of those deals close. So I would imagine September will come back up to around that 30 to 34% that you can see that we're seeing pretty consistently here. It is one item of note is that in August, even though we had this $5 million of proposal volume, our acceptance rate was only 19%. And if you see, average days to acceptance in September was 9, in August 13, in July it was 20. It's not that that's going down. This will come back up. But I would say that August was a little bit of an anomaly. While we got a huge amount of proposals out there, a huge amount of proposal volume, we also saw the proposal rate suffer for that. I really don't think that this 19% is going to go up. So not necessarily a bad thing. I think if you look at this in terms of raw number of acceptances, not necessarily as a percentage, August was still very, very strong. As a matter of fact, stronger than several of the other months. But it does look like that we put some proposals out there that maybe were aggressive, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but maybe we're aggressive, and as a result, we saw the acceptance rate come down. As we look at the proposal breakdown, and this is specifically for September, so this is not Q3, just for September, you can see the breakout that roughly a quarter to a little bit less than a quarter of our proposals were over that $5,000 mark, 352 of them under that $5,000 mark. You can see the average proposal size. Of these 94 proposals, not only were they over 5,000, but the average was 17,000, and the acceptance rate 4%. A couple items of note. This trailing 12-month a proposal acceptance rate on numbers over 5,000 or proposals over 5,000, that 11% is actually increasing. So, when we started tracking this, that's typically between 5 to 7% when we look back on a trailing 12 months. We've started to see that kind of creep up month after month after month. So we're starting to have a little bit more success on proposals over $5,000. Now, our proposals under $5,000 are still 4 times more likely to be accepted. So I don't want to overemphasize that point. I don't want everybody to go out and start giving $5,000 proposals or $17,000 proposals out, because the acceptance rate is still relatively low, but we are seeing that trail up. Overall, I think our acceptance rate on proposals under $5,000 is 40%, is really, really strong. If we look at who's accepting those, you can see that about 52% of our proposals sent out are to existing customers, 48% to non-existing customers. That even looks better. I think the idea with proposals is, yeah, of course we want to go after existing customers, and why? Because you can see our acceptance rate's higher, right? Uh, about 2 out of every 5 proposals that we send out to them are getting accepted, as where non-existing customers, only about 1 in every 5 are getting accepted. Still, the way to really grow, especially on a recurring basis, is to continue to give out proposals to these non-existing customers. Historically, when we go back and when we would look at this, it would be low 40s. We might get to mid 40s, but 48% is a really solid number. That's really encouraging to see. And then lastly, if you look at the marketing channel here, you can see that 60% are existing customers. These are proposals given out over, I believe, the trailing 12 months. And so this doesn't correlate directly to September, but the trailing 12 months. 60% given out to existing, and that's what I was telling you. If you look back historically at this 52% of proposals given out in September to existing customers is lower than we've historically seen. And then you look at the top other 5 marketing channels, the enhancement bids, walk-ins, referrals, customer referrals, and canvassing. I think it's to note that referrals and customer referrals, if you put those together, essentially they're I would think kind of the same thing. That's 9%. That's actually our second largest marketing channel, is that referral channel. So there's a lot of good literature out there. There's a lot of good advice out there about how to get referrals. Uh, I would strongly recommend reading that. Strongly recommend kind of diving into that, because I do think that that's really an untapped way that you can grow the business relatively quickly. So hope you enjoyed the recap. I'll talk to you again in another quarter. Thank you.